guest will be Bill Laswell, who, if you've been involved or listened to any type of experimental jazz, you've probably come across Bill Laswell, but you've also probably come across him in a lot of more fringy, out there hip hop from the 90s, as well as things like Buckethead, for instance. Buckethead is the guitarist is actually how I was first introduced to Bill Laswell, because one of the first albums Bucket appeared on was Praxis, and I, after really digging that, I researched and found out that although Praxis is a band, technically, it's still one of Bill Laswell's many projects. He's a producer and a bass player, but he literally, like, everything he's on has a kind of Laswell stamp. And there are multiple different bands, from Praxis to Material to, of course, Bill Laswell's solo albums to several others, Tabla Beat Science. There are a ton of others. He's been on literally hundreds of records, as well as also produced songs for, what is it? Herbie Hancock was I think he was at some point involved with Miles Davis. He's also been very involved with John Zorn. If any of y'all know who John Zorn is.
Yeah, I'm familiar with John Zorn. I'm not a fan, though.
Yeah, I'm quite a fan. I mean, some of the stuff is a little annoying, like his things, like he'll do like a random album with Mike Patton that's just him making noise with his mouth. I hate crap like that. But Bill Laswell is like definitely everything he's on comes with a seal of musical quality, and it's not for everyone. I mean, he's got a record for everyone, considering he's been on hundreds. But some of, like, you've got to be in the right mindset for it and understand what this type of music is.
Yeah, what I've heard of Bill Laswell, he's sort of in the same vein as, Buckethead and John Zorn, and sort of almost like a very prolific auteur musical artist like that, but he's a lot more accessible. He does a lot of, like, very new agey sounding music.
Yeah, a lot of new agey stuff, a ton of ambient stuff, and back when it was big in the 90s, a ton of dub, which I like listening to a lot of dub when I write. Basically just good music that definitely has a lot of world influences. I've seen in record stores things he's been involved in wind up in the world section. So I think that's really what attracted me to him when I was a kid, because I've been into him since childhood. It's that the music he's involved with, and that whole sphere that ranges kind of like, you've got him and then all the various musicians that kind of flutter around him, from John Zorn to Nicky Scopolitis, Buckethead, etc. They're just making music, and they're really pushing boundaries as far as genre, but I wouldn't call it accessible, or, I mean, it is accessible, but if you play it to someone who's, like, say they're just interested in, rock or metal or stuff that's, not instrumental, I don't think they'll like it. But I also don't think they'll like it if, like, say they go into looking at Bill Laswell stuff only familiar with Buckethead, whereas he's more of an easily accessible, just instrumental guitar albums, which they are awesome. I'm not knocking Buckethead at all. I love him. But this is just so much different, and I don't really think a lot of people pick up on it. Like, I think they when they're getting into him, they'll kind of just go all throughout the Buckethead stuff and then kind of dip out. I think it's better for people to dig in and look up people like Nicky Scopolitis, Sonny Sherrick, just all these freaking crazy musicians that do stuff that you might be able to classify as jazz, but it's just cooler than that. I can't really explain it.
Are you sure that he understands StreamYard and it's not I mean, you sure he can make it? I mean,
his assistant told me that he's technologically illiterate,
here we go.
but she would be there to help him.
Okay. Well, here's hoping.
Yeah, I've been going through his Bandcamp page and listening to his stuff. And the favorite thing that I've listened to so far is one of his Buckethead collaborations called Death Cube K. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's really awesome. Yeah, if you're into ambient, is it him?
Hello, sir.
Get it back on the thing.
Get him back on the thing. He is on.
No, so we can see him.
Hey, can you hear us, Bill?
He doesn't have his webcam on. He doesn't have to have the webcam on.
You have to talk to this.
Hey, Bill, can you hear us?
You can't do the telephone. You have to talk to this one.
Hey, is everything set up on your end, Bill?
Hello? Hey. Hello, sir? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey, Bill.
Okay. Can you lean in just a little bit more into your mic? We can't hear you very well.
Okay.
Or turn the volume up.
How's that?
That's better.
Yeah.
Okay, Zach, it's you take the lead.
All right, so this is Bill Laswell. As I basically just introduced him, he's been on hundreds of things from experimental jazz to more instrumental rock leaning things. Collaborates with Buckethead, Zorn, and as well as a lot of world and reggae people. Like one of my favorite releases is Garrison Hawk on his old MOD Technologies label. So what are you doing these days, Bill? I realize that there's some kind of MOD Technologies Reloaded thing going on.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same story. Just continue. And with that label, we're putting, trying to release records as we go. It's same idea, same thing. Just continue.
Yeah. So I've realized or noticed that you put pretty much all of your old discography up on Bandcamp. Has that hurt you financially any, or do you think it's better to have everything just available for everyone, like good quality, easily accessible, like downloads?
Well, everything's hurting me and everyone else financially, and these systems like Bandcamp are just more to do with making music available that people can hear. It's not, we're not really in the business anymore. It's not like working with labels or having success. It's more to do with just making music available.
Yeah. In some ways that's good, but then I can definitely see, it hurts creators. So the stuff you all do now, is it just straight to Bandcamp, or do you still put record, like actual vinyls in stores?
No, we've tried to put out CDs and vinyl. There's hard copies. It's a little harder, but we're doing it. And Bandcamp is just a small part of that.
Yeah, that is awesome. So how many albums have you been on at this point? Like, everything started with Material, correct?
Kind of, yeah. It goes back to the late 70s. Up until now, I've lost track, but they say there's about 4,000 records.
Wow.
That's quite a lot. I was off when I was saying 200.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that's including like collaborations and such.
Yeah, collaborations, remixes, that kind of thing. But if you add it all up, it's quite extensive, I guess.
Yeah, it is. One thing I definitely want to get into on here is because I've been listening to the stuff for I mean, since I was a kid, so there's like a ton of musicians that I've noticed who will appear on various albums, but then they kind of disappear. Uh, One of those is Extract. I know he was on Buckethead's Bermuda Triangle album, but he was also all over that Material rap album that had the green thing on the cover. I can't pronounce the title.
Right, right.
Uh,
People come and go. That I remember that, and I know who you're talking about. But they come and go, and they also die. So you have to use that time with the people that are there and available. But I know exactly who you're talking about. The record was called Intano Rumuri, and there was a lot of abstract DJs and kind of mutant hip hop references on that, if I recall.
yeah, speaking of hip hop, what's your take on modern hip hop? Because I've had this thing go on where I'm not old, but I'm already looking at like modern music, and I feel like the old guy because I can't relate to any of it. And I look at hip hop from back then and to now, and it seems like the like drastic drop in quality for like what's at least what's on the radio. It's almost like a crisis, like where it's never been that bad before. And I would blame things like streaming, although I like them.
Pretty
Are you
loud.
involved in that world at all, or is it just a completely new?
I'm not so involved in that world right now, but I grew up with hip hop and the beginnings, from the beginning. And I played in the Bronx River Armory with Africa Bambaataa, and we started playing, beats and bass lines. It's not so different from Jamaica, so the dub connection. And then it kind of expanded and went commercial. And when hip hop went very pop and commercial, I didn't have any reference to it at all. But to me, from in the beginnings, it was very important. And today, I like you said, I don't relate so much to what's happening. So I've I've moved. I can't continue doing at my age that kind of music. So I moved on to storytelling and playing with masters. And that's my goal, is to continue.
Yeah, speaking of master storytellers, you've done a lot with William S. Burroughs back in the day, and this is pretty much a book-oriented podcast, and everyone on here is familiar with Burroughs. What was it like working with him, or was he a complete weirdo? Like I imagine he would be.
Well, but I met Burroughs in the early '80s, and I think the first time was with Laurie Anderson, and then I continued to be in touch, and we did recordings. And William Burroughs is you don't call him a philosopher, but his reputation with people is always like homosexual, junkie, you know, but it's much deeper than that. He's a person that predicted future events and situations. I had the privilege to do a lot of work with him. I would say one of the great writers, but he's not a book writer. It's not novels. It's ideas and telling people about the conditions in the world. And he had this gift of prediction and telling what he knew, which was immense amount of knowledge.
Any of you two Burroughs fans have anything to ask or say?
I would just like to know. Yeah, I would just like to know if there were any, if he had any, stories that stand out about his time working with Burroughs. Any anecdotes or anything.
Well, it was more to do with talking about the world, about conditions. And I went to Kansas and met with him a few times, and he was always concerned about the future. He was concerned about the fact that people are being born of less quality, that right now we're not seeing the quality of people that are being produced, and concerned about where the world would go. He was not a subversive person at all, as they say. He's not the king of punk rock, any of that. He was very much a humanitarian in a way, and a philosophical humanitarian, and people don't get that from his work. And, related to him is Brian Geisen, who's also an incredible artist, and connected to them is Paul Bowles, who's an intellectual, again, philosophical human. They're humanitarians, and they're great leaders, of great causes, and their work has come to be the fruit of what we're living now.
I mean, that definitely seems to be somewhat the case. I know that William S. Burroughs was very concerned with methods of controlling the population at large in everything, even including like right down to language. And that's, to me, that seems to have been a very, a very important thing to be concerned about, because it seems like, as we go along, control continues to be expanded into every aspect of our lives.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of control was very much part of his idea, and it's a little bit George Orwell as we're living it right now. In Portland, Oregon, and in Seattle, their words, their aspects, their perspective is here. It's living here right now.
Now, as far as some of the other people you've been involved with recently, which I guess this really isn't that recent. I'm thinking it was maybe 2011. Is Garrison Hawk going to have another reggae album out soon, or is he just what else is he doing these days?
I hope so. I really hope so, but I can't make that happen. We're in crazy times right now, so we can't really just orchestrate people's opportunity, their career, their whatever you call it. But I hope so.
Yeah, 2020 is definitely a year that it seems to be getting crazier and crazier, and I have the gut feeling something horrible is going to happen before the election. It's going to change everything.
Something horrible is happening right now. So don't worry about the election. Don't worry about the election. That's 100 days from now.
Yeah,
100 days is a long time.
Yeah. Thinking of a different, more slightly apocalyptic event, but who knows? Okay, so you've been involved with Buckethead for quite a while, and mainly with Praxis. Okay, so how does that come about? Because I know that all of your albums are sort of they're still bands, but they're things you're putting together in a way. One Praxis album is different than another Praxis album, even though it's the same band members. And so the original era was way different than Sacrifice and Metatron. Can you elaborate on how that kind of comes about when y'all are working?
Well, they're kind of step by step and day by day. And I met Buckethead through a band in San Francisco who were called Limbo Maniacs, and they said, "Well, we have a friend who just plays in his room, and he's a nut," and that was Buckethead. And, his favorite musicians were Michael Jackson and Bootsy Collins. And I said, "Well, I don't really have access to Michael Jackson, but maybe we could do something with Bootsy." And that's how we started. Came from this band in San Francisco, and then once Buckethead was in place, we started doing more things and more live playing. And he's got his own way of doing. He's not a team player. He just does Buckethead. So, but we did manage to do a lot of live stuff, which was fun and memorable.
Yeah, speaking of that San Francisco band, the Limbo Maniacs, I really wish they would have done more. It seems like the only one out of that who really kept moving was Brain, going on to Primus and Guns N' Roses. But then I think the guitar player Merv did some things too.
They're all really good. I played what was it? Not this February, but last in San Francisco. I did a residency, and they all came, all Limbo Maniacs, and I thought maybe that's a key to doing. Maybe they should do a reunion or something. But Brain continued. He's a professional drummer, and he continued on and did a lot of stuff. And I think he'll continue to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so the way, like the typical way that you work, because it seems like it's just a variety of projects that, as you said, they're going step by step. How do other people view it coming in? Is it almost like a studio musician type thing? Or is it like everyone getting together and collaborating on records with the same goal in mind? Like, how does that go?
It's not a studio. Studio musicians are not interesting. It's nothing. It's nothing to do with music, really. It's something about the responsibility of the job. But with these projects, you just continue. One day you're doing work with people, and the next day you're saying, "Well, how about this? Come and play with this person or that person," and it just kind of developed. And see, these are different times. There was money in those days, so you could say, I have a budget. Come to New York or come to Brooklyn, whatever. And we just play and do it, and then move on to the next thing. Maybe the next thing is not in Brooklyn. It might be in Japan. It might be in different places.
It's definitely cool. So, would you say that the lack of that kind of studio funding does it really harm the music, or does the music still, is it like an escape for you, or like I'm pretty certain you've probably not had to, resort to doing something else to pay the bills. Like, how does that work? Are you still like when the people come by to do new records? Are they expecting anything, or is it everyone's like on the same page? Because at this point, all creatives, from writers to most filmmakers to musicians, are just doing it because they love it. And for some, it seems to be they have the luxury to be able to do it. I imagine you're probably working with some younger people too who don't. Are they more bitter than, say, the old people, or not old people, but people who've been in it longer and were in that era when, I guess, physical copies were sold and it was just a lot happier for everyone? Is there more, like, basically, is there a lot of bitterness now, or is everyone still just accepting that and kind of taking advantage of not having to produce something that makes money?
I first of all, I don't pay the bills anymore. I just, you know, forget about it. It's like the world is messed up. I'm not respecting any system whatsoever. And as far as younger people, there's not that many younger people that are impressive. So I'm dealing with the same people. I'm in 4 bands where I'm the youngest person. And if I don't do something soon, I'm going to be in 3 of them or 2. So as far as younger people, I'd say new people, but not younger, because I don't see any quality in the younger people.
Believe me, I don't either. None of us are impressed with ourselves here. Trust me.
Yeah, you can read off theories about that all day long. And although I definitely differ with a lot of Burroughs' philosophies, I think he is right as far as our culture is everything from language to especially pop culture and media are controlling people and dumbing them down in a way that's not necessarily detectable, but it happens over time. I would say that the reasons for that happening and like what's actually going on are I'll probably be completely on the same page, or I mean on the opposite page than Burroughs, but it seems like most younger people they're not getting into things these days. That probably doesn't make sense, but like back in the record store days, I partly grew up during them. I mean, they were on their last leg when I was a kid, but there was something about going to a place and getting involved in culture in a way that's almost like, I wouldn't say a marketplace, but just a culture with actual people around conversing over different things. And then when things move completely to the internet, although there are more options, a lot of like statistics and whatnot have shown that younger kids don't have the incentive to take those options. There's a book I read about it called, and actually 2 books. One of them is The Closing of the American Mind by Alan Bloom, which wasn't about the internet because it was written pre-internet. The other book is called The Dumbest Generation by, I'm blanking on the author's name, but the 2 books kind of go together. They reference each other a lot. And the whole theory is basically kids do have the world opened up to them via the internet, but they have a lot more access to things to kind of goof off with. And they're going to go in that direction immediately. And so maybe that's why people are being less impressive in this era, whereas there's not, I guess, a culture to be discovered. So they're not going at it looking like what's the best thing. They're just wanting, I don't really know how to phrase it, what's going to be immediately appealing to them at that moment. Like if they like a lot of one thing, they're just going to be able to dig into that and not explore around. And that's why I think our state could pretty much like 100% be attributed to the internet. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, pretty much.
What do you 2 think about that, or do y'all not?
I could go for like 30 minutes on it, but it would deviate, from what we got going here. So I'll just leave it at I'm ashamed of my generation and everything that they've wrought that they think is positive, and that's all I've got to say about it.
What about you, Ben?
I'm not really sure what to say. Like, there's a lot of good on the internet, but I think it probably has resulted in a lot of unintended consequences that have caused problems.
Yeah. But more specific things. I think I mentioned in my first album or my first email, there's an album that Praxis did called Mold, which I always really liked because I love listening to ambient music when I read and whatnot. But it didn't have anyone involved with Praxis except pretty sure you were on the credits, but you said that you actually weren't involved in that album at all. What is the deal with that?
I'm losing. I lost.
Can you hear us, Bill?
I got you. I had you. I lost him.
Yeah, I don't think he can hear us.
Hold on.
Hmm.
You got
He's
me?
getting sounds like he's getting set back up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you. We can hear you, Bill.
Yeah. I assume you can't hear us at this point. Oh, you can?
I got you. I got you now.
Okay.
So the album Mold by Praxis, did you have anything to do with that, or
no, I had nothing to do. I believe that was a guy who worked with me called Peter Weatherby, and I think he made that in the effort to start a label with it, but it has nothing to do with me at all.
yeah, it was just how was he able to get the name? Was that just like a thing that you granted him?
Yeah, it didn't matter. You know, names, we own them until someone else takes them away. You know, so it doesn't really matter. So I just let people take whatever names they want. So.
Yeah.
But Peter wanted to do that, and I don't think I ever even heard the record. I thought the cover was interesting.
Yeah, as far as ambient goes, it's one of my favorites. There are definitely levels of what makes a good ambient record, and that one's definitely in the top tier. Now, have you ever?
I didn't even realize it was ambient.
Yeah. Have you ever worked with Les Claypool? I know that you've been around that whole kind of scene, but
Yeah, I mean, I know him. I met him a few times, but I didn't really work with him. Bernie Worrell worked with him, and Brain, of course, but I didn't work with him. So I'm not really into that scene so much.
yeah. Thinking.
So you would not consider Les Claypool a virtuoso of the bass?
No, that's not bass playing. I don't know what it is, but it's got nothing to do with playing.
Well, I mean,
bass.
he plays a bass, but you're saying it's not what you consider like legitimate bass playing, right?
I don't know what legitimate bass playing is, but I don't consider that bass playing.
I mean, he does play a bass, but
Well, he's kind of playing it like a.
Well, he has a bass. You know, they all do. You know, Flea has a bass. They all do.
Mm. So you're not a fan of the slap bass technique, right?
The what?
Are you saying you're not a fan of the slap bass technique?
I'm a fan of that style if it's Larry Graham, or if it's Bootsy or Louis Johnson. But everybody else can go home. So.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I do love Claypool, but as far as the bass goes, I've always preferred Bootsy over Claypool for sure because
oh no,
I feel like
don't even think about that. That's not even a remote comparison.
Yeah, I think what it is like the bass shouldn't really be up front and center like it can be, but the way he's doing it, it's like he's playing a bass like it was something else. That's although interesting.
But if you want to talk about bass and you want to talk about that style, there's only a few people that define that clearly, and he's not one of them.
Yeah, that was definitely funny. Now, the All-Star album that Praxis had who was it? A ton of people. Everyone from Mike Patton to Serge Tankian from System of a Down.
Yeah.
That one seemed to be the last real Praxis album. Have you all done anything since then? I know that there have been some remixes and stuff, but as far as new music,
I think that was the last real record, and that's been a while. And but that doesn't mean it's finished. I saw Brain last year. We talked about doing things, and Buckethead disappears. He'll call you and threatens to move into your house, and then the next day he disappears for a year. So you never know what's going to happen. But there could be another of those projects, and I wouldn't mind that. It could be good. So.
Yeah, it seems like Buckethead had quite a health scare, and it's kind of pushed him not out of retirement. He was never in retirement, but it's like pushed him into like basically turbo productivity to where I've not really been able to keep up. I'm not the biggest fan of solo guitar records.
Right.
I'm a fan of Buckethead's albums that have all kinds of other crazy stuff going on. But when it's just him and the guitar, I get kind of bored, even though he's very good.
Sure.
But he's not. I'm not really a fan of the new Buckethead Pikes direction, but it is.
Well, those are just things to do to continue existing. They're not like concepts that he spends. Musicians spend a lot of time making records. He doesn't. And we had some moments in the past, but he's not a person that like really crafts a record and has a statement. He's really just doing his fan base and same music for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Is he like? I've got the feeling that he's not like really a cool philosophical guy to hang out with and talk to. Like I feel that he has kind of a guise of this. He's basically a character. But I've always had the feeling that like when the character comes off, there's. What would you say to that? Is he pretty like? You're saying he's not really crafting his records with care and he's doing fan service, which there's a place for that. But you get where I'm going. I'll let you have the floor.
Yeah, I mean he hasn't changed really since I met him, and it's not about. I mean, he had opportunities to play with the greatest musicians in the world, and he would rather throw toys into the audience. So it's a different head. And even now, as he gets older, he's still young. He's still someone who's a fan of certain things, a fan of Alejandro Jodorowsky, and someone who likes still today likes horror movies and crazy things and different tastes. You don't find that so often. He's not someone who says, "Wow, it'd be great. Let's make a band with Tony Williams," which he could have done, with some thought. But it's always something to do with his world, becoming this character who has no face, has no image to people. And the guitar is just this tool for chaotic shredding. It's not a musical tool.
Yeah, there's that.
It sounds like partially demonic possession.
Yeah, there's that famous story where he auditioned to play for Ozzy Osbourne, and Ozzy told him he had to get rid of the bucket, so he came back the next day wearing this weird frog hat.
Yeah, I remember those times. The Ozzy thing was more to do with Ozzy's wife. She thought he was a nut, and that.
Well, I mean, look who she's married to, though. I mean,
well, yeah, she's married to a nut. But that's the point.
Yeah, but if
two of these guys sitting in the kitchen drooling, it's not going to work.
Yeah, if she thinks Ozzy's a nut, what I mean, if Ozzy's a nut, then what the hell is Buckethead? That she draws the line at that.
That's even worse, and it's not good for Ozzy. So anyway, that didn't happen. That's what he wanted. He didn't really want to do Guns N' Roses. He wanted to do Ozzy.
That's weird. I mean, I'm not really dogging on Ozzy, but like, I kind of applaud Buckethead for doing that because to me, at this point, Ozzy's kind of just a product. Like, I don't even think he writes his own songs anymore. But
Yeah.
the Guns N' Roses thing was pretty cool. I'm actually one of the people who enjoyed Chinese Democracy quite a bit, more so than any of the other albums, which you don't find that sentiment a lot. Most people hate it quite a bit. Have you ever been in, like, when he was doing that, would, because I know he was the one who got Brain in the band. Did he
Right.
ever, like, reach out to you for anything like that, or did he know that you probably wouldn't have anything to do with that type of
No, I remember it was. I thought it was a good. I talked to Brain about it. I thought it was a good idea. You know, it's good work. It's a job, really. But no, he would never reach out to me for bad.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yeah. So, out of all the projects that you've done, do you have a favorite thing that you fall back on? Because personally, as a listener, I mean, I've not listened to everything. I'm probably the most partial to things like Painkiller and really weird things like that. Like Painkiller and Sacrifice to me go hand in hand. And especially the most of the things under the MOD Technologies label. Like, do you have like a favorite era of Laswell, or do you not really compartmentalize like that?
No, I don't like the idea of favorites. You know, so I always think that they're all out there and everybody's got their own judgment. And you know, my idea is just try to keep going, and you know, if I survive this time, I try to do more things, and those things will relate to past things, and they'll relate to future things, and they'll relate to things that didn't have the opportunity to be produced. So it's, you know, I look at it pretty wide. I don't have a favorite thing. And, you know, people lose track of what I'm doing. I worked a lot in Africa. I worked a lot in India, in the Middle East, and in Japan, um, in Cuba. And when I go to those places, people say, "Oh yeah, that guy, he was big in the '80s, but he's not around anymore." Well, I'm not around anymore because I sold 2 million records in Ethiopia. You know, I'm not around because I made changes in West Africa. You know, I'm not around anymore. So it's you can't keep track of someone who's not trackable.
Yeah. So, Ben, when you were going through his discography, what did you say stuck out to you the most? I think you said Death Cube K.
Yeah, that ambient album he did with Buckethead.
Yeah, that's a nice project.
Yeah, it was interesting to read the like story he had behind it about Death Cube K being like a demon he sees in his sleep paralysis or something like that.
Yeah, Death Cube K. It's an anagram of the letters of his something about his name or something. You know, in William Gibson's book, I forgot the name of it, but he uses Death Cube K as a he creates he liked that name because he was listening to that record when he wrote the book, and he created a name of a bar that they were going to, and it was called Death Cube K.
So, I think that was, no, it probably wasn't Necromancer. It's probably one of the
No,
other
not
ones.
Necromancer. It was called it was the name of a robot. I forgot the name. I will get it. Can't think of it at the moment. But,
So, are you a pretty literary person? Do you read quite a bit, or?
well, I used to. I don't now. I used to read everything. I have a mountain of books, and I used to read constantly. But In the last 10 years, not so much.
Is there a reason for that, or
Complacency and watching television. But there was a time when I read everything in sight.
what do you think made you kind of lose that spark?
I don't know. Just being full. It's like a computer. It's like you have to reboot it. It's like your brain is too full.
Okay, there's another person. I'm not familiar with this. I told one of my buddies that you were coming on, and he wanted me to ask you about a person you had a record with named Hakeem Bey. What album
Hakeem
was
Bey.
that? Yeah, Hakeem Bey.
Oh,
So I understand he's somewhat controversial. Do you know more, Ben? 'Cause I don't know anything.
he's an anarchist. The problem is, he has some interesting theories. The problem is he's very vocally in favor of legalizing pederasty.
Shit.
Oh, that's not true. But Hakeem Bey, there's several. Well, we did the one book which was an anarchist book called The Taz, Temporary Autonomous Zone.
Oh, I've read that.
Hakeem Bey's name is Peter Lamborn Wilson. And when 9/11 happened, he freaked out and went to the woods and lived somewhere upstate in a cabin. And haven't talked to him since that time. But he lived in Iran for 7 years, and he was translating a lot of books back and forth. And he's a brilliant writer in person, and the whole pedophile thing was blown out of proportion.
It's kind of weird how
And
that.
I don't believe any of that so much. And I knew him very well, and again, he disappeared around the whole 9/11 time.
I'll check that out. The
Well-
artwork on that book looks exactly like some kind of like Praxis project. Like it's kind
Well,
of
that's
weird.
James Cohenline, who I met James Cohenline through the Taz book, and then I started to use him a lot on Axiom projects.
Yeah. That
When
dude-
you say disappeared, so and he was never seen again,
Say it again.
or you just have it. When you say disappeared, do you mean that he disappeared and was never seen again, or you just haven't seen or heard from him?
No, he disappeared, like from everywhere, from everyone. And that was around 9/11. And I met a guy last year. I played a concert with can't remember, John Zorn and Milford Graves. And a guy came to me and he said, Peter Wilson says hello and he misses you and it'd be great if you could talk to him. And that's Hakeem Bey. And, I hadn't seen him all those years.
kind of creepy. Now, John
Yeah, I
Zorn,
wasn't aware he. I was just gonna say I wasn't aware he disappeared completely. I thought he did put books out since then, but maybe that's what he's doing, living like Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah, I'll track down a copy of that one and read it. Now, your projects with John Zorn, Painkiller, Naked City, and I'm sure there are a ton of other ones that I'm just not aware of. Were those of the same era? Because both those sound very similar. I can easily find that on Google, but figuring I would ask you here. Naked City. Do you still work with John Zorn that much?
Yeah, pretty much.
Do you share his?
We don't work now. We're kind of sitting at home doing various obscure things to take our time. But we worked up until the time we couldn't. So.
do you share his theories about music that you just record like a day of city life, and it's its own music? I mean, that technically has its own structure and everything, or do you think that was kind of just a clever like amusement? I mean, I consider it like something to think about when you're stoned, maybe that idea that he had, but I don't consider it like a legitimate musical foundation, though. I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Well, we're completely different in every way. And when it comes to recording and making records, we're completely different. And his majority of his music lately is compositions, and they're all kind of related to this klezmer approach and the Jewish music. And I have no connection with any of that. And my work is totally different. It's no connection, but we've known each other for many years. And we always got along, and it was always a contrast. There's never been a real connection musically.
Maybe that's what makes albums like Painkiller so interesting, is because they're so like kind of chaotic and violent. Like you can feel some sort of creative tension that makes it kind of go together.
Yeah,
Were those
that was the time, and we brought into that Mick Harris, and Mick was coming from nothing to do with Zorn's music. It was from hardcore. He was in Napalm Death.
Godflesh, yeah,
And yeah, those bands.
Diane.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, we're talking with our first guest here, Bill Laswell, musician of how many decades, Bill?
Sorry?
How many decades have you been active as a musician now?
Well, since the late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Are you familiar with his work?
No, but I'm mostly thinking about holding the camera in the right place because I don't have any pants left. Palm Springs is out of quarters. I finally found the one last quarter I needed to do a load of laundry lying by the side of the road, but I didn't have enough to do to dry, so everything's drying right now, and all I have is a wife beater to wear. But if you told me a year ago that I would be scrounging by the side of the road for quarters to do my laundry, I would have assumed it would have been my fault.
He actually played with he did a project with William S. Burroughs back in, I guess, the 90s. Was it the 90s or what? Anyone?
I think I'm gonna have to let you guys go. But where are you from exactly?
I'm
Where are we all from?
Tennessee. Me and Jeremy are from Tennessee. Ben's from Iowa, and lives in California. I don't know where she's from.
I'm from Wisconsin. Spent a lot of time in Chicago.
Okay. Well, thanks for the thing, and but I'm gonna have to go.
Okay. Anything you want to plug before you go?
Well, just thanks for communicating, and you guys have a lot of information. Just use it right. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming, Bill. I look forward to listening to more of your music.
No problem. I'll try to keep doing this.
See you, Bill.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
And you just click off the... Okay.
So, Ann, I guess you scared him off.
Yeah, I felt shitty enough for being late again, but I also, just the sound of my voice makes sad Kermit the Frog there just running terror back into his mind.
You know what? I could be wrong on this, but I got a distinct vibe that maybe, and I don't know what his situation is, but I got a distinct vibe that maybe, just maybe, Mrs. Laswell, he didn't want to upset Mrs. Laswell by being on a stream where a woman was
Not wearing any pants.
yeah.
The thing is, that isn't an erotic choice. That's a filth and hygiene choice at this point.
I gotta say, the best thing that came out of that was him just straight up, Les Claypool's not a bass player.
That was pretty funny.
You know what? I have no problem shitting on my generation anytime, but Claypool, has earned some respect in his own right. He has age